very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Michelle Shine. I'm the program manager for Hatch Pakistan, and I'd like to kick us off today by giving a bit of background about Hatch. So Hatch was founded in 2018 to build with an aim to build a thriving startup ecosystem in Sri Lanka and to expand its outreach across South Asia. It's now being launched in Pakistan, and you're joining us today for the very first session of Hatch Pakistan. We have various programs, including our mentorship program, which you are currently attending, our incubation and acceleration program, along with our learning management system, which goes live on the 15th of March in partnership with Coursera. Through these initiatives, we at Hatch hope to play our part in empowering Pakistan for a better tomorrow. And these programs are our tools which will enable us to create an ecosystem of mutual support and learning with Pakistan. With that, I'd like to welcome you once again to the inaugural session of our mentorship program called Let's Hatch It Out. This is a series of conversations that have been founded to empower you through insightful discussion, followed by mentorship sessions with our esteemed mentors. This session is called Where Are the Women? It is the first episode of the Let's Hatch It Out series, which will discuss the role of women in leadership positions in startups, the challenges they face, and what the future for women in Pakistan looks like. Given that women make more than almost half of our population, we believe that it is extremely important to encourage such conversations targeting their growth, because it is only when we have them on board that we will be able to achieve our collective growth as a society. So following up on this series, our next series will touch upon topics including fintech, edtech, and the rise of e-commerce in Pakistan, in which we will be joined by experts from those respective fields. So more on that later. But for now, I want to hand it over to Minuri, who is the head of programs at Hatch Sri Lanka, who is going to get us started. So Minuri, with that, over to you, and looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. I'm so very excited to be joining you here all the way from Sri Lanka. What you see in the background is just a snippet of what Hatch Sri Lanka looks like. So we'd love for you all to come down to Sri Lanka and experience what it's like to work for the best co-working space in the world, as we were awarded last year at the Global Startup Awards. You will hear a bit of hustle and bustle behind me, and that is a wonderful city of Colombo up and active. And that is what makes us unique and part of who we are. Today, we are joined by an amazing set of panelists, including Nadia and Brinda. Fazila Gopalani will not be joining us today, being the true champion athlete that she is. She has overexhausted herself, unfortunately, today, and she's very sorry that she's unable to join us today. So we'll start off with the lovely Nadia Seth. Nadia heads the Policy and Planning Division at SMETA and has a keen interest in improving public sector policy. She possesses a deep understanding of the public sector, and having held intensely demanding roles, she steered a number of initiatives of private sector development in Pakistan. Her area of expertise is SME development and women entrepreneurship promotion. Having worked directly with SMEs, she's well aware of the challenges SMEs and startup face and how best to avoid the pitfalls while starting up. Welcome, Nadia. It's fantastic to have you on the panel today.
Thank you, Minuri. And first of all, before I get into what I want to discuss today, I'd like to thank Hatch for making me part of this entire team and this effort of bringing, women together across our region. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar. You mentioned, I'll build upon some of the things that you just mentioned regarding my work experience of working with the SME sector. I've been associated with the sector for a fairly long time. And when we come across SMEs and we look at the women profile or women-led SMEs, I'm afraid the numbers are quite small. And that's what it is across the region. When we talk about the challenges that these women face, apart from, the challenges that any kind of business faces, these are more pronounced for women entrepreneurs in the country. And that would include access to capital, for instance. That's one of the foremost, and it has a link very directly with, inheritance laws and, access to wealth. Then education itself, skills, being one of them as well. And then moving on to access to information. So access to information, I think, is one of the foremost biggest issues that women face, that there is no single platform where women can go and find out what is happening within the entrepreneurship ecosystem, what kind of support is available to women entrepreneurs across the country through different programs that are being undertaken. So these are the 2 or 3 things that I think are the key challenges of women entrepreneurs in Pakistan and probably around the world as well.
Absolutely, Nadia. Thank you for that fantastic insight to the work that you've been working on, and what you're looking forward to working towards in Pakistan as well. And joining us with us today is also Brinda Selvadurinyanam, who is the CEO of Hatch Sri Lanka. And Brinda comes with over 10 years of experience in the UK legal sector, and she's very passionate about financial literacy and promoting female entrepreneurship, as we've known firsthand, and it's been an absolute honor to support her in her journey. And to really advance this vision, she co-founded Hatch in 2018 with the vision of building an economy of innovators, reshaping the way we work and live. And at Hatch, she is absolutely determined to provide startups with all the services they need to innovate, grow, and succeed. And right now, Hatch Sri Lanka has a space for over 500 members and 73 plus startups and growing who come together every day to ideate and grow. So welcome, Brinda, to the panel as well.
Thank you so much. I'm just so happy to be here. Honestly, the first Hatch Pakistan talk series, and on a topic that's, as Minari mentioned, really, really close to my heart, and that's women in the workplace. So really excited to get discussing the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nadia and Brinda, now that we're all geared up, I think Nadia kind of, opened the conversations as well. And it's very interesting when, we were discussing the topic with Michelle over in Pakistan. When you really look at some of the numbers, women, globally still get paid less, I think about 17%, 18% less than men still. And this is after 100 years of, suffrage and so many other movements that have been in place. There's still a lot of work that has to be done. And you only get, I believe, about 33 women in CEO positions at that Fortune 500 level. I mean, this was back in 2020, and only 26 women actually serve as head of state, according to UN Women. And when you look at the people who can make those legislative changes, the likes of what like Nadia does, more at a political level, it's very low still. I think we're looking at about only, especially say in Pakistan, less than 20% of women who are legislators. And of that, only 12% have gone on to be appointed to ministerial positions, right? So these are roles that can really enable change. So the stats aren't really, acting in a lot of our favors, especially in the South Asian countries, that we represent. But when you look at female participation in Pakistan, we believe it's low due to a number of reasons, like Nadia mentioned, social norms, household responsibilities, a lot of the care duties, regardless of if you work or not work, still fall on females in a lot of South Asian countries. The lack of safe transport, and also the lack of access to networks that can help find suitable employment for women, as well as the lack of education, and most importantly, the lack of decision-making power that can lead them to financial independence. So I really want to ask our panelists, in terms of the challenges, women face, whether it be Sri Lanka or Pakistan, that you come across in your journey. So Nadia, I'll start with you. You work with SMETA that sheds a lot of light on small to medium enterprises. So how often do you see women leading these enterprises? And if the numbers are low, why do you think they're not as prominent as they could be?
Thank you, Minori. Yes, the numbers are definitely low when we talk about women entrepreneurs, and speaking from my experience and from the organization that we work with. So our job entails, developing an ecosystem for entrepreneurship in small and medium enterprises. And the challenge is whenever we're interacting with women entrepreneurs, you've mentioned those challenges yourself. I mean, the social norms is one thing. At the end of the day, women are caregivers, they are homemakers, so that has a very, very huge bearing on the, entrepreneurship opportunities and participation in economic activity. Access to finance is another issue for women entrepreneurs. And I think just to sort of give you a bit of context also here, if you look at the overall economic structure, I believe about 20% of women are actively engaged in entrepreneurship or are gainfully employed, are a part of the economic activity happening in the country. So, and most of them, if you look at further disaggregated data, you'll see that it is on the micro side of entrepreneurship, mostly engaged in agriculture and fishery. And then you have, these women who are working from their households, whether it is the handicraft sector, a lot of women engaged in, very so-called traditional women-led businesses, setting up a beauty salon, services like that, spas, and then textile and the garment sector. So that association is there. So there are only those traditional sectors that women have been engaged in. And one of the reasons why this has been what we've seen is because these can be easily managed from within their households. So they're basically home-based businesses that are operating for livelihood purposes, even those that are engaged in the agriculture sector. Now, coming to, let's say, the more medium-sized or smaller, on the higher side of the micro side of businesses where you're talking about formality. I must mention that micro enterprises in the country are mostly informal. Even women entrepreneurs, they're hardly registered with any, sort of government agency to do business. So that's also an issue. And the reason why that is an issue is because there's lack of access to information. So even if somebody's enterprising enough, they really don't know where to go, how to register their business, where can they get any kind of business development support services as well. So I think these are some of the challenges that we have seen coming across in our interaction with women entrepreneurs in Pakistan.
Fantastic, Nadia. Thank you so much for that insight. So Brinda, based on what Nadia has shared, do you see similar challenges that's present in Sri Lanka, or have you witnessed like any different factors that limit female participation? And what are some of the challenges you faced as a female entrepreneur while launching Hatch?
Thanks, Minari. I'll just maybe give some context to Sri Lanka. So the Sri Lankan labor landscape has about 33.3% of female participation. And of that pie, we have 25% that are female entrepreneurs. So again, relatively small. And I think the challenges that Yuminari and Nadia raised are very much the same in Sri Lanka as well. And there's a massive social stigma attached to women working because obviously there's this perception that their responsibilities should be at home or it might be neglected. But another area, again, Nadia touched upon this, and this is access to wealth and funding as well. And not just culturally, but actually legally as well. So, for example, in the northern province of Sri Lanka, and it's in a city called Jaffna, which is actually the first place we launched Hatch. There's a law there called the Teshavalami law that actually prevents women, Tamil women in the district, the province, to actually not be in a position to sell their land or actually take out any bank loans at all. So in order for them to go to their local bank and get any kind of small to medium sized business loan, they would need to get the consent of their father or spouse. So you can already see that getting that approval from your family and your society, all of that plays a massive role in a woman's ability to actually go and even start, let alone all the other challenges that will come. So I think that's one example. And when we even talk about women's access to education, we've learned that things are not really black and white. And there's so many cultural reasons why women even get educated. really recently, Minari and I actually did a field visit to one of the universities, and we went to the engineering faculty, and in conversation with the dean, we were sort of asking, what's the percentage of women that are enrolled in engineering? And he said, it's about 10%, but we have a great uptake of women, almost 90%, who are taking biotech. And I said, that's really great. What does this mean for the women? What do they go on to do? What job does that lead to? And he sort of said, I actually don't even think they go on to join the workplace. And that to me was really shocking, because and as we dug deeper, we really understood that the reasons why women even go to get an education, to not everywhere, but in most part, is to marry well, right? And that to me was really eye-opening, because they're incredibly hardworking, capable women. And I think that's really where the private sector and organizations like Hatch have to really come in and play their part and help these women connect the dots, and potentially, explain to them what their career options are. So there's definitely a lot that we should be doing as well with universities, because it really starts there as well. And just to kind of touch upon challenges that I've faced starting Hatch. Firstly, I moved back to Sri Lanka a few years before I started Hatch. And I think one of my biggest challenge was just trying to understand the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem. I think 4 years ago, the ecosystem was really fragmented. I mean, it's a small ecosystem now, but it was even smaller 4 years ago. And it was hard just to get connected to anyone, let alone opportunities to network with women. So I think again, in the absence of that, we really created Hatch to be able to create those connections for women in particular, because it's obviously hard enough being an entrepreneur, but being an entrepreneur within the startup ecosystem, which is primarily male dominant, is really intimidating, and you kind of need that support. But fortunately, as time progressed, I've been able to reach out to so many male allies as well, because it's definitely not just a one-way thing where it's just women supporting women, but you definitely need that balance, right, with men and women supporting each other as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just importance of male allies along the journey to making, enabling the right pathways for women, I think is very important. I think even, when you look at Accelerate Her, which is one of the first female accelerators we're doing in Sri Lanka, I think recognize the importance of having male allies along the program. If they know the crowd, if they know the way, pass it on to the women, right? Get into those circles and show us how to make it work. That's what we do. And to everybody joining in on the Zoom session and joining us live on Facebook and our other social media channels, feel free to type away any questions, anything you'd love to ask Nadia, Brinda, just anything for Hatch Pakistan or Hatch Sri Lanka in general. We'd love to answer your questions towards the end of the segment. So Nadia and Brinda, now that we spoke about, the challenges, and it's very similar actually both in Pakistan and Sri Lanka when you look at it. I'd really like to focus now our conversation about the opportunities that are also available, right? Or that's not yet explored as well. So in Pakistan, Nadia, we understand that, in 2021, I think there was still less than 2% of female-founded startups in Pakistan. And this is despite startups like Iran raising, I think, one of the largest rounds of funding for a female-founded startup, right? So there's recognition, there's opportunity. But with all that said and done, and I think we touched on this very slightly, women still choose to pursue your traditional careers that get passed down or you're encouraged to follow by your family members and your peers. That's in teaching or medicine. Opportunities in tech, for example, and public sector or even government positions, especially at the leadership level, that can enable legislative change to like what, Brinda shared, for example. It's about changing the rules to enable that equal playing field as well, are still in a very dire need of female presence, like higher female presence. So Nadia, for our audience, how can women take on a more active role in, say, policy making and policy implementation? Perhaps they don't have to be a part of a legislative body. They could perhaps, get involved in lobbying and creating the right networks to make that change happen, right? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, Manori. You don't need to be part of, the legislative assembly, so to speak, but you can form networks. And I think networks is where the way to go when it comes to women entrepreneurship development. When you look at, the current makeup of Pakistan's parliamentary system, and you mentioned this in your opening remarks as well, that only 21% there are only 21% of female parliamentarians in our National Assembly. And then despite a reservation for women representation in these national assemblies, and then so on and so forth at the provincial, at the village, and at the tehsil level. So when it comes to influencing policy, being part of, developing policy and influencing that change, I think it has to come through, women coming together, networking, building forums, and then advocating for a change with these legislators, which basically means that this has to be a two-way street. There has to be greater communication between the legislators and the women entrepreneurs. If I recall correctly, only very recently have, chambers of commerce and industry specific to women entrepreneurs been set up in Pakistan. A movement was going on for a very long time, but in terms of formalization of these networks, only very recently we've seen the growth of these women entrepreneurship chambers of commerce and industry. And I think these are great platforms for women to, advocate for their cause in terms of, developing policies. One very important thing that I think I need to mention here is that the way development support, the way, any kind of support comes through for women entrepreneurship development, whether it is for startup, for existing businesses, it is always in a fragmented manner or undertaken in an ad hoc manner. So if you were to ask me that, is there any women entrepreneurship development policy in the country? Sadly, I'd have to say no. So whatever support is coming in is being undertaken through it's more of a programmatic approach as opposed to, a policy imperative, something being decided, then something, coming with a complete action plan, different stakeholders within the ecosystem, undertaking those support measures which fall within their area of purview. So in terms of supporting, in terms of, developing this policy narrative, in terms of influencing policy change, I think it is the networks of women that have to be, facilitated. Their creation has to be facilitated. And that's the way to go forward in terms of influencing, in terms of making a change happen for the better, for, greater gender balance in the overall ecosystem for entrepreneurship and business growth in the country. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nadia. And we've got a comment from Humaira, who said that she's a community and growth manager for EdTech company. Thank you so much for this amazing session. And she would love to be mentored by you, Nadia, because you really stand as a real role model for women in business. And she really wants to start something that supports women who wants to start an EdTech business from home. So that's fantastic feedback. Thank you, Humaira, for joining us today. So Brenda, what does the startup sector for females in Sri Lanka look like? What are some of the learnings you've experienced, and what opportunities and lessons would you pass on to striving female entrepreneurs in Pakistan?
I think the startup ecosystem, specifically for women in business, has changed drastically. Again, like I said, from when we started 4 years ago, I think back then there was a lot of involvement from the public and private sector at the more grassroots level. So mostly supporting cottage industries, and obviously that they are very important sectors that we do need to support, because we know that SMEs are the backbone of our economy. But I think back then, there was very little visibility to support female entrepreneurs. And I think that's really where Hatch took a stance and said, we want to showcase the incredible talent and the incredible women that are doing things to disrupt the industries that they're working in, right? So with that, what we wanted to do is just start. So we started in March 2020, so just as we went into lockdown. We started a boot camp for female entrepreneurs, and we really struggled just to find 5 women to come forward and take part. But again, through their incredible dedication and hard work, the program was a success. We were able to take some of these women from prototyping to actually selling their products physically within the matter of months. And what people were able to see was real women actually creating businesses despite lockdown and selling and making money. And I think that the power of storytelling is incredible. And I think through that, we were able to second round get 50 applications, which blew my mind, just from seeing other women being able to do this, right? And I think that's some of the challenges that we face as female entrepreneurs, just second guessing yourself often. And I think what I've learned over the last 2 years is that in moments of crisis, I think women step up. And I've honestly seen women who have become sole breadwinners of their family due to COVID. Women are incredibly resourceful, and when obviously, when you put all of them together, the power is just magnified. And we've been 5 series on, and honestly, it's taken a life of its own. And when you talk about networks as well, Nadia, I completely agree. The power of the Kick-Ass network has been infectious. And I think we've easily had about 10 to 15 collaborations off of that alone. And then and with all the work that we do, we always encourage people to pay it forward, right? So that's just that idea of creating ripples of impact within your community that's far beyond your reach. And I know I shared stats earlier that showed women participation being quite low, but actually within the programs that we run at Hatch, for example, the most recent program in clean tech that actually Minari and her team ran, we found that there was 70% of female representation in an industry that globally only has 30% of female representation, which is incredible from Sri Lanka, right? And I was just, that's such a proud moment to even see. And what we realized in that journey is that women need to step up more and take ownership. If they are the CEOs, if they are the directors of the business, they need to step up and say, yes, I'm doing this, and be willing and open to just ask questions, learn from each other. And I think that we obviously get a front seat to that journey, and it's an absolute privilege for us. So I'd recommend, any striving female entrepreneur, just be willing to think big. And as I said, ask for help if you need it. What's really helped me is long-term mentorship. And I have both male and female mentors. And honestly, it's just perspective. In the early stages, it's all about gaining perspective. It's all about learning. I come from a legal background, and I've had to learn how to construct an entire building. So you're constantly learning, growing, and I think you should never lose that, whether you're in business, whether you run your own business, but that hunger to just learn from each other and being humble enough to say that you don't know something is so important.
Absolutely, B. And I think that's the absolute key to learning. And oh my God, Nadia and B, while I'm having this conversation with you here and the audience, the chat is absolutely on fire. And to your point about creating networks, it's happening right now in front of our eyes. And and I think this is a great example of just one person asking a question in a forum, in a safe environment like this, how you can get support systems. So Zareen Balak from the State Bank of Pakistan just shared there are programs and products designed specifically for women to really help female entrepreneurs. So somebody's expressed interest there, and Zareen's now connecting with them to enable their business happen. There's lots of questions about, okay, where do I go to if I want to create a network or find that support like mentoring? So I think we'll get into a bit about where Hatch Pakistan and Hatch Sri Lanka as well some of the initiatives that we have can really step into, supporting the female entrepreneurs, not only in this forum, but who will be joining us later on once this session is up on social media as well. But loving the conversations, girls and boys, I think there as well, which is fantastic. So keep this going. And I'm sure Michelle from Hatch Pakistan will connect you all later on. And we'd love to have you over at Hatch Pakistan, using the mentoring service, leveraging off on each other for support, and really build that community to support each other. And like Brinda said, to really pay it forward. So, we're half an hour into the conversation, Nadia and Brinda. I can't believe time's flying by, really. But we've heard so much about you in terms of your experiences, the challenges and the opportunities that are out there. But I'd really like to, get from you, Brinda and Nadia, in terms of, what do you think is next? Like, where do you go from here? How do you see the female landscape changing, say, in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what is possible? I'll start with you, Nadia.
I think everything is possible. So I think the future is right there, and it is a glorious future, if I may say so. I'll tell you why I say this. There are steps that are being taken in the right direction. I come from a policy perspective. One very recent development is, the approval of a national SME policy for the country. Now, there are specific interventions, a specific policy direction that has been laid down in that policy, which talks about looking at, the rules, regulations that stifle growth of business with a gender lens. So that's one thing. How can that entire process be simplified to support women, more women coming into entrepreneurship? That's one thing. How we can do away with we have this NOC regime in the country. So how do we do away with this NOC regime where there are low risk businesses? Why does somebody have to first go get an NOC before they even start doing their business? Let them grow, leave them regulation free. So that's essentially the policy direction that we're taking through this new national SME policy, specifically focused on women entrepreneurship development in the country. That's one. The other area that we're looking at is providing them infrastructure support. So as I mentioned, most of these women, at least in the country, are household businesses. So they are, because of the social norms, also because of mobility issues as well, we are providing them, the government is providing them incubation facilities. So it's a complete infrastructure where household businesses have access to office space, there are networking opportunities, there are trainings, there is provision for mentorship as well, and access to markets. So that linkage creation in a very safe environment that a woman would otherwise not have access to is being created. The other area that we're looking at in terms of supporting women entrepreneurship and in terms of where we're headed in the future is access to information. Now, virtually, if you look at the numbers of women with mobile connections or internet connectivity, it's grown phenomenally over the past year and a half, at least, and especially during COVID as well. We've had a number of new businesses being set up from households, and e-commerce has flourished and is growing at a phenomenal rate as well in the country. You see women coming out, stepping out from their traditional, sectors of work to design services, to architectural services, to, food processing as well, selling on e-commerce platforms. So the policy direction is that you set up a platform where all information related to different sectors of business is available, where the compliance requirement is there, and where access to markets is also possible, with a linkage of B2B and B2C platforms as well. So that's another area that we're looking at. On the fiscal side, how do you make the fiscal regime more gender sensitive? So the government has very recently actually announced a break in the tax liability of women-owned businesses. So that's another policy imperative, a policy principle, a policy intervention that has been made by the government so that more women would come into business. Another example, as you mentioned, it was also mentioned in the chat box by a representative from the State State Bank is the banking on equality policy that the State Bank of Pakistan has very recently launched. And the idea essentially is that you improve gender diversity in the financial institutions and their access points, to develop women-centric products and services. There are various schemes that are also running to support women's access to finance, one being on the micro finance side, the other being on, larger SME side. So there's a credit guarantee scheme running for women entrepreneurs who do not have access to collateral. So that's one. Then creating women desks at different commercial financial institutions. So it might be easier for a woman to perhaps interact with another woman. And most of all, and I think this is a fundamental issue when we talk about either, entrepreneurship in general or even women entrepreneurship in particular, is access to gender disaggregated data. That's one huge area where I think a lot of work has to be done. And we see initially that this step has been taken by the State Bank in terms of, financial inclusion. But when we want to talk about very recent numbers or talk about numbers related to what kind of services are being provided, or what is the overall number, or what kind of businesses these women are engaged in, those databases are really not available to, make informed policy making. The other area is to provide, in line with the financial support that the State Bank intends to provide to women entrepreneurs through this banking on gender policy. The other area is to provide support, financial access through different grants programs. So I'll just give you an example. So we're running a program by the name of National Business Development Program for SMEs. So there is a special focus for women-led businesses in this program, and it's a grants program that supports business growth. It's for startups as well, and it's also for expansion of businesses. And we've had a great interest of women applicants in this particular program. Similarly, another program on providing support to women entrepreneurs for setting up stitching units. So those are the kind of measures that the government is undertaking through the ambit of different institutions. But one thing that I think that I mentioned earlier on is that the way to go forward is to come up with one policy as opposed to, different policies. Let's just put it all together into one framework of women entrepreneurship development. And I think with every stakeholder playing their part, we can make great strides in supporting women entrepreneurship in Pakistan, and also establishing regional connectivity. Just like this, I never knew about Hatch Sri Lanka, and I think through this interaction today, I will be in touch with Hatch and exchanging not only ideas but maybe even launching programs together. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, Nadia. And I think that regional cooperation between especially the South Asian countries, I think is the way forward for especially entrepreneurs as well. And that's something we've been encouraging our startups here in Sri Lanka as well, to make as many international connections as possible, and enabling those connections as well is what we've been doing over the last couple of months. I know there are a few hands that have gone up for questions, so we will be calling you out very soon. But before we do, Bea, what are your thoughts on the future?
Well, I think that women are learning more and they're earning more, and I hope for the future that means that women will be investing more in other women. And I think that once that starts happening, and I think it is, but once it starts increasing, I think the type of questions that female investors will be looking to ask will be more about, what are your policies around employing other women within the workplace? What are your return to work for mothers? What does that look like? So it might not always be about the profit of the business, but then maybe conscious investing. And I think that those are some of the things that we can really look forward to in the future. And I think even in not 5 years' time, but even now, I think there's a lot more interest in ESG funding that's coming up. So a lot more. So for example, even Hatch is starting an ESG fund just to support female entrepreneurs. We have a lot of work a long way to go, because programs like Accelerator and Kick-Ass we need to get these females in a position where they're fundable. And so there's a journey, but we're definitely on that journey and trying to work with as many people from the public sector and private sector, because it's definitely not something that we can achieve alone. And I think that I think the future is bright. I absolutely agree with Nadia. Anything is possible, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brinda. I think the future is definitely bright, especially when we all come together and support each other. Like Brinda said, I think integrity is what's most important, and your most authentic self, that you put yourself forward when for female entrepreneurs. So I'm going to start with questions now. I do see Nayab Fatima Khan, you do have your hand up. We more than welcome you to unmute your microphone and ask your question, if you're ready. And if anyone else has any other questions along the way, please feel free to, use the hand up icon or unmute your microphone and ask a question. Nayab, are you ready?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating me. I want to ask you, especially in Pakistan, there is a lack of influence, lack of informations, and lack of we cannot go for the loans and everything. As Nadia told us, so many hurdles between to do so many things because of women. So I just want to ask you if you guys are set up any program for the developing the women, especially as a housewife. I just forget everything what I did in my bachelor life, or I do so many courses and everything, but I am right now I cannot talk even I cannot talk in even publicly, or between corporate sector, or I cannot talk. But I was working as a very good company in past. Do you guys do any some type of workshop to develop these type of to enhance our skill again, and they just do many courses or something like that, if you please? Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Now, I think I might take this question. Michelle, feel free to jump in and to share your thoughts as well. Nayab, I think there's an exciting lineup of programs that Hatch Pakistan is working on, especially the LMS system that's coming up, which will be really beneficial for you. But I highly recommend signing up for the Hatch Open House mentoring program that Michelle's just shared on here, the link to. So it's a Google form. Feel free to sign up for it. And what will help you do, Nayab, is actually start having those conversations, right? Slowly developing those relationships. So even if you're looking to return to the work on a part-time basis, or say even a casual basis, some of these networks and relationships you create during the mentorship program will allow you to re-enter back into the workforce. And who knows, sometimes even working from home, right? So those are some of the amazing opportunities, because Brinda, I think we've had, through the introductions and networks that were made through Open House in Sri Lanka, people have gone on to build amazing businesses and networks, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts there. I think get connected to Open House Mentor with Hatch Pakistan, because there's a really diverse group of people, and coming back to that perspective, right? I think that's really critical. Just being aware of the different options out there. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of people are willing to help, and you just need to be willing to ask. So definitely start with the mentoring, and I think that's a really great way to start thinking about your different options.
Absolutely. Michelle.
Yeah, if I could quickly pitch in, I just wanted to let everybody know, so this is our first session, and I'm aware that not everybody is so well informed about what we're doing and what we're planning on doing. So this is just a kickstart. This is just giving you a little glimpse of what we have in store. The reason I have, put the link in the chat is that I see that even within an hour, we were able to form such a beautiful community in such a small amount of time. So we are essentially trying to do that. We're trying to create a community which is going to offer support to each other, where you will learn from each other. and also from our mentors. So we have Brinda and Nadia on board as our mentors, and we have over 20 other experts from different fields. So depending on whatever guidance you need, be it in your professional life, be it in your academic career, or be it with a startup or an already established business, we're here to offer you that. So the first step of doing that, so is just signing up, so we know how to reach out to you, and then we'll take the conversation forward from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. Anab, I know you said, you're shy and, you can't even speak in a public forum, but here you are, you put your hand up, you've taken that first step to put yourself out there, and you should be very proud of yourself for having done that.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And this is what we're here to do at Hatch, right? To really support you along the way. And sometimes it's the small steps that make a really big difference. So thank you for asking that question and sharing and joining us today, really. Thank you, Nayab. Great. Next we have Ifra Ayub. I see your hand up. Would you like to share your question with the panelists? Hi, Ifra.
Thank you. And thank you. And this platform is much needed, I believe. And the people like Komal Aziz and you guys and Nadia are actually guiding this. And I think this is going to be very amazing, because this is much needed thing in Pakistan. Because I've been through the journey where I've seen that there are options, but we still don't know about these options. So I totally agree with the Nadia's point. And Nadia can share or shed light on few opportunities that we can avail as a startup or as a leader or a director of any company, so that we can actually like help our startup grow with the women card. Like that's how I believe, because it's very important. We don't have such opportunities, and we don't even know about those opportunities as much, but still we are growing, and the communities like these are amazing and helping us in so many areas. And yeah, looking forward for the Nadia's answer.
Nadia, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Ifra. I think thank you for the appreciation, first of all. And as Minori was also mentioning, as Brenda did as well, that the idea essentially is to, get people talking to each other. Some of the programs that I mentioned, in terms of where you can get support from, I can speak from Smida's point of view. So we have an entire menu of business development services support that we provide, whether you're looking for skills or training on how to start your business or how to expand your business. So on the training side, on the capacity building side, on compliance related issues. So how do you fulfill your, let's say, tax liability? How do you register your business? So that kind of technical support, that kind of training support is also provided. That's an ongoing thing. And we have these training calendars which are put up on our website. And otherwise also you can always contact any of our offices. In terms of any other kind of business development support that you might be looking for in terms of access to finance, for instance. So we have a grants program that we're running. I mentioned that earlier as well, a national business development program for SMEs. So that's where we're giving, matching grant support to SMEs, and there is a special focus in the evaluation criteria on supporting women entrepreneurs through that program and several other programs as well. If somebody is looking to start their business, they can come to us, we advise them, we counsel them, we first try to find out what is their interest, and then take it a step further by sharing, pre-feasibility studies, then developing business plans, linking them up with, financial institutions at times, and with other network of institutions that we work with. So that's generally the cycle of support that we provide, and I'd be more than happy to work with you individually as well, as and when you reach out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ifra, for your question. You will all hear a very familiar sound behind me. That's like, we have like this little guy in a pastry cart that goes around. I think that's familiar ice cream sound that everyone hears as well. So we have one more commonality across Pakistan and Sri Lanka as well. There you go. Fantastic questions. Thank you, Ifra, as well. And while we're on it, so Brinda, why did you pick Pakistan as the next, port of call for Hatch? And, what are some of the challenges, if at all, you faced any while setting up Hatch Pakistan? Because M. Anas Khan has asked that question. What's your strategy in terms of inclusion, especially in Pakistan? And how have you overcome those challenges, if at all? So there you go.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I think Hatch Pakistan makes a lot of sense. Again, when we have been sharing just here today, I think there's a lot of commonalities between Sri Lanka and Pakistan. And so I think some of the problems that we're solving for can and should be shared from Pakistan to Sri Lanka and from Sri Lanka to Pakistan. And I think access to market has always been a huge issue for startups. And I think going out into the region was always our plan. But it was always about finding the right partners who share the right values. And I think with Asif and Nasir and Ali and his team, I think they have such incredible values. And I think that they genuinely care about all the startups in Pakistan. And I think that really resonated with us. And I think in any good partnership, you have to have that level of respect for each other. And so I definitely think that we made the right decision and we are where we are, and I think together we can do incredible work as well in the future. In terms of challenges, I think the team in Pakistan on the ground are doing an incredible job. I mean, we're here to support in terms of advice, but they've been taking all the brunt work, to be honest with you. And so we're just here to really share all our learnings and experience and make the process a lot easier for them. Yeah, but to be honest, I can't wait to actually come physically to Pakistan because COVID has just been so. Minari, myself, Suresh here have all been like, okay, when can we travel? So I think just coming there physically will really give us a sense of the warmth that you have in your country as well, and I just can't wait for that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, B. And Nadia and Brinda, I'd love to hear from Michelle as well on this, because I think when I look at, everyone who's on the chat and the questions that are coming, I think there are connections looking to be made, guidance looking to be had, right? So say if there's somebody like somebody trying to re-enter the workforce, or somebody who's 18 years old and don't know what career path to take, what advice can you give them, right? Because entrepreneurship can seem quite daunting. There's a lot of risk you take on. There's a lot of success you can take on as well. What are your what's a wisdom you'd impart on them? I'll start with you, Nadia.
I think whatever your passion is what you should follow. What comes naturally to you, whether, it's being a homemaker, even for that matter, do that. If it's going out there, helping people, setting up a business, do that. So whatever is your passion should be what should be your vocation, I would say. That would be my advice.
Absolutely, Nadia. Brinda?
For me, again, same thing. I think following your passion and really trying to see what impact that you can really make in the world. And as Nadia said, it means that impact can mean anything, right? It can mean the impact within your community, to your neighborhood, even if you have kids and you're collecting your kids from school, the mothers, the parents, it's just what you leave behind in the world is the way I look at it. And I think like in whatever small capacity you can create an impact, I think that's what you should focus on. And you do get rewarded in incredible ways, right? I think that sense of fulfillment comes from doing things that you truly love. And then, as I said earlier, just paying it forward for others around you as well.
Absolutely, B. To add to that, before I hand over to Vishal, really, and I think talk to as many people as possible. I think sometimes just hearing from others about you, I think will give you a very different perspective to how you saw yourself, for example, how you see yourself, right? So I think it's very important, use and leverage the opportunities like what Hatch Pakistan is providing to you, to female entrepreneurs. And if you're a male ally on here, pass on the word, create those safe environments, that camaraderie, so that's safe, especially for female entrepreneurs. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical safe space, but also a safe, closed space for you to have the right conversations, to be able to question things, to be able to challenge things, right? And that's what we really want to create. So Brinda and Nadia, thank you so very much for joining us, and we wish Fazila a very speedy recovery so she can get back onto her next marathon as soon as possible. So thank you, ladies, for joining us and for that amazing conversation.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Minori, for moderating this session as well on such short notice. And with the WhatsApp request, we will definitely be making a WhatsApp group very soon. So we will hopefully all of this will keep in touch and take this conversation forward from there. Thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to the next conversations and to see how we grow the Hatch community even more.